It's the Smart Driving Cars podcast. Thanks for joining us. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to motoetf.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi, Alain.
Hey, good morning again, Fred.
Good morning, and we are very happy to have with us Anuj Pradhan from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Thanks for being here with us, Anuj.
Sure thing, Fred. Nice to be here.
You're an assistant professor of mechanical and industrial engineering and co-director of the Human Performance Laboratory. Love that title. Fill our audience in on the work that you're doing.
Sure thing. Yes, our work revolves around trying to understand the human in a system broadly. So in our context, we want to understand the human driver in the driving context, in the driving system. We want to understand what driver behaviors are that contribute potentially to crashes, how we can help mitigate those. And we've been doing that for a while with, with our driver definition being all kinds of drivers with a focus on maybe teen drivers and older drivers. But lately, we've also thought about expanding our definition of driver a little bit to sort of include operator rather than driver, given the advent of automated systems in vehicles, whether they are lower levels of vehicle automation or higher levels of vehicle automation, where the driver starts relegating their authority and their responsibility to the system, and therefore they're less of a driver and more of an operator. So our current focus is looking at the human in the driverless car, or the driver in the driverless car, I guess. Trying to see what the impact of vehicle automation is on drivers, on human drivers from a human factors perspective, less from a technological standpoint, but more from a human factors standpoint. That would be behavioral, cognitive, maybe even from a social perspective. What are the impact of all of automation on drivers?
Oh, it's interesting. Are you looking at the way people behave and relying on some of the new safety systems that we're finding in vehicles, the lane keeping and the automatic emergency braking, that kind of thing?
Very much so. That is actually one of the focus of our studies currently ongoing. We want to know, we recognize the safety benefits, the promised safety benefits of these systems. There are data out there that tells us that there are crash reductions because of the automatic emergency braking systems, or collision warnings. But we also have to understand how humans react to these, from something potentially as simple as how much of a warning is too much of a warning. Do we want to think about nagging? Warnings being nagging, so much so that drivers turn them off. So that's something that we think about. Or we also think about over reliance on these systems, whether drivers adapt to the technology in the vehicle so that their behavior then changes. This behavioral adaptation could have negative effects. An easy example would be if you have a modern car that has a blind spot warning system that gives you a little light on your side view mirror if there's somebody in your, if you're changing lanes and if there's somebody in your blind spot. What drivers may tend to start doing is relying on that light and stop looking over the shoulder like you're supposed to, like it's safe to do so. And that sort of behavioral adaptation could have negative impacts. Say, for example, if your sensor breaks down in your car and your blind spot warning no longer works, or hey, you're at the airport, you have a rental car that does not have the system, and you have lost your the good habit of looking over the shoulder, right? So this intersection of technology and human behavior is something that really interests us in a sense of how humans could potentially change as a result of interfacing with these technologies.
So is it a matter of needing to educate people better on how these safety systems can and should be used?
Um, I think education is a very important part of it. I am a believer. We are doing research on trying to figure out how we can best design training, best design the content and delivery of training that will help drivers gain the appropriate information about the systems and about the limitations of the system. So I think training is a big part of it. However, as important or potentially even more important is the design of these systems right at, right on the on the drawing board, design of the systems with the human in mind, right? So that's where human factors engineering, human factors design comes into play. It is very important, I think, to take into account human capabilities, human fallibilities, and all of the mess that human drivers are when we are designing these systems that are really designed to help us in terms of convenience and safety. So we have to be designing for, let's say we have to be designing for your your worst driver on the street.
Of course, I'm not a human factors guy, although, I certainly, hopefully I appreciate it. And in fact, for many years, team taught a course at Princeton called Human Machine Interactions, and five of us, full professors from engineering, a couple from psychology, and one from philosophy, and we dealt sort of through the range of the human machine interaction problem. Some of the sort of tenets that we kind of, the obvious tenets was that, or at least tenets that I every once in a while bring out in class is computers should be working for us. I should not be working for a computer. Okay. Now, of course, I have to type, or I have to somehow signal to the computer, I not call these things computers, some sort of intention. It has to get a signal from me from something, but it shouldn't be making me do things. Or certainly not that I don't want to do things, not that I'm trying to not do things. In some sense, I'm trying to not do things. There are things that I want to do. I mean, don't make me do stuff. It drives me nuts whenever I see, some app that makes me do stuff. And in fact, it should have known, or that it should have captured and should have been making me do it again. I mean, it's a fundamental. And I think in the driving thing, I think, in a sense, I know it's invasion of privacy and so on and so forth, but to what extent would you like to see these systems evolve to basically they be in some sense smart enough, which doesn't really take that much intelligence, to figure out, who it is that's in there, who you're dealing with, what the hell their capabilities are or whatnot. Hell, the computer's been, I mean, after you drive 5 miles, you've at least been in there 5 minutes. Holy hell, it gained all kinds of information about you. Probably knows more about you than you know about yourself, or could. I mean, certainly, it seems to me Facebook does it, just for the hell of it, to sell me crap. Okay. How do we really make these things so that in fact, it's not training us. It's probably, except for maybe, maybe if we get into this whole thing about whether or not it's human error versus misbehavior that leads to crashes, and just the change in the concept of, hey, it's not just a random process that we have to sit there and remain vigilant and be able to take over and mitigate the situation on instant notice. Holy hell, it's an evolution of me getting more pissed off, excuse me, I gotta use the right word, and all of a sudden, doing something, misbehaving, or, it should be able to smell my breath. It should be able to know whether or not I had too much to drink. Okay. Is that an invasion? Talk to me about these things.
Yeah, no,
I
no,
mean, or maybe that's you've done it all, and I just haven't caught up to where you are.
no, absolutely, Alan. I think, well, for one, let's not have Facebook get in interface with our cars. I think that would be, going down a completely different path. So, but I say that because of the privacy aspects of Facebook. However, you have hit the nail right on the head, Alan, with this particular train of thought about knowing what the human is doing. So right now, driving is a human in the loop process. The
Right.
human is absolutely an
Absolutely in the
integral,
loop.
right, is an
Right.
integral part of the process.
King,
Right. And
he's
all of the
Trump. Go ahead.
and all of the technological
Oops.
additions to driving right now are to do more with the vehicle, maybe with the environment, less with the human, right? And what I mean by less with the human is it is sensing the human. It is not sensing the human as much as it can or as it should. There are a
Well,
few.
right, because look at the stuff we put out there. I mean, I just in the newsletter, there's about this new Chinese version of a Tesla that is creating who knows gigabits of data per nanosecond, but to do with 18 cameras and lidars and bidars and zabidars and woodars. Probably nothing focused on the person behind the wheel.
Right.
No, are you kidding? How do you miss the boat that badly?
Right. I think there are some systems that are doing this well. So the Super Cruise,
Yeah, of course.
if it's okay for me to use, brand names here, they
Sure is.
have they have uh, they have the most elegant system in
I agree.
place right now
I
for
agree.
looking at the driver and incorporating that driver's current state into what the automation is doing. And I think that is the way things should be going. Incorporating the driver into the loop, into all of the algorithms, into all of the decisions that the automation and the technology and the algorithms make is critical. But it does mean that you have to know what the driver is up to. And we have the sensors to be able to do that. You're right. The lidars and the bidars, they can actually point it inside. And who knows, they may be doing so, but not using the information enough. I think technology has progressed well enough. I think we have some really, really smart programmers and coders and engineers who can actually factor in the human into all of the decision that is made by the automation algorithms. I just don't think we have gone far enough down that road, but I think it is absolutely critical. Even if it's, if we take a simple a long-lasting problem of distraction. The best way to tackle distraction is by knowing if the driver is distracted or not. And right now, it is, I don't want to say easy, but I'll say easy. It is easy to do that. You can point cameras at the driver and have very sophisticated algorithms figure out whether the driver is looking at the road or not, whether the driver's mind is wandering, whether they're dozing off, and like you said, whether they've had one drink too many. And all of these can actually be incorporated into the system. And, that's at the micro level. That's at the, at the second per second or, like you said, millisecond per millisecond level. But even broader at a macro level, the systems are capable of knowing who the driver is in terms of capability, right? So is this a really good driver with, so many insurance points, or is it a teen driver with, in his or her fifth hour behind the wheel? The vehicle should be capable of knowing that, and then accordingly intervene as necessary. And that may be the simplest way to take care of all those nags, right? Like we talked about these warnings.
Sure.
If you get a warning that's not necessary, that's a nag, and people are going to turn it off. But a warning may be necessary in the exact same situation for driver A, who's a novice, and may not be necessary for the exact same situation for driver B, who's an expert, and we sort of know that he doesn't need the warning.
Well, I'd even take it. I'd even take it not just between the novice and the expert, because I think everybody's a damn good driver, and I without proof, I just put it on misbehavior. I just put it on people just deciding to not pay attention and drift across a double line. Okay. And in fact, if you drift across a double line and there's nobody coming the other way, then who cares? Whatever, maybe gentle reminder. Hey, yo, you sure you know what you're doing? Yeah, I want to drive down the middle of the road at night on the 2-lane road so that I have equal chance of being able to see the deer, whether they're coming at me from the right or from the left. Okay. Because I've hit too many of those damn things that jump out in front of me, and I don't want to do that anymore. So if there's nobody coming the other way, I drive down the middle of the road. Okay, damn it. I know I don't want to explain that to the system. Okay, it should realize that. Now, if there's a truck coming down the other way, man, boom, but it should know that. It should know that. And it should know whether or not I'm, dozing off, or my heartbeat is beginning to change, or being more animated, or whatever goofy, whatever signal. Don't people send signals that sort of say that they're about to misbehaving? Doesn't happen randomly, just in the spur of a moment, whatever. It's sort of, I don't know, doesn't it sort of build up? If it does, you have a leading indicator.
Alan, I was looking at an app the other day called Anura, ANURA, that uses the camera on your phone, just using the camera, no other sensor, tells you your blood pressure, tells you your heart rate. So I assume any camera in a vehicle would know that, could know that as well, as you were saying.
Remote sensing, and it knows you. It could have kept data on you. It doesn't have to send it out to every, Google search, whatever, or Facebook, whatever, but it can use it internally to save your butt.
I agree.
When your butt needs to be saved.
I agree.
Otherwise, leave you alone.
And with Super Cruise, one of the news items is that GM is saying they're going to be building that into some of the Chevy Bolts.
I mean, I saw that and I think that's absolutely fantastic. It took them how long? What was it? 16 when they put it in the CT6 or something. They built maybe 4 of them, sold 3. I mean, you go in a dealer and you'd ask them, hey, I want Super Cruise. Oh, you got to buy CT6, and plus you have to buy the premium of the super premium. Of course.
That's
whatever, and all this crap, and we don't have any, and GM wasn't, I guess, building them and jamming it down the throat of the dealers, and so, and holy, are they really going to put it in the Bolt?
Now that would be good, because really I agree with Alan, and what he's saying. Super Cruise is great, and it is premium. Yes, it is. It is the top of the top. It's the cutting edge technology. They have this really awesome eye tracking, head tracking technology. That's it's made by Seeing Machines from Australia. They're the best.
Yeah.
And they're obviously putting it as a premium in a small population of drivers who probably don't even need it. Because if you think about it this way, if you're thinking about the Chevy Bolt, right, that would be an entry-level vehicle, let's say, potentially driven by teenagers, potentially driven by younger drivers who may be more risk-taking, who may be more prone to distraction, and maybe the technology is best suited for that particular vehicle class than what it is right now on the CTS and so on. So I think the trickle down of that technology is really great that GM is doing. I'd love to see some sort of driver monitoring system in every vehicle that has advanced technologies.
Why don't they put it in all of them? In volume, the price goes to whatever. Right? I mean, there's some form of Moore's law in there in any of these. Sure, you make 3 of them, it's going to cost a hell of a lot of money. You put it in Chevys, you put it in your best selling cars. Come on, GM. You know how to do this. You know how to scale. You know how to make stuff that, starting out in volume and just turn and getting the price down. Why it's taken them so long? Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe Mary Bauer's seen the light. Okay. Whatever. She announced this at CES, of course, and maybe there it's, it's sort of the gizmo, whatever, but darn it, this is fundamental, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. And Super Cruise is indeed impressive and elegant, like I said. Also, there's a very interesting business model for GM. I'm sure, they've already figured this out. But what I do understand is Super Cruise is a subscription service, like your satellite radio. So there you go, you plug in Super Cruise into as many bolts as you get, and then you have this unending stream of monthly income from there. So that from a revenue standpoint, I think that's something interesting that they're doing. But really getting it down to the masses, I think, is what's important, the driver state monitoring. Because again, from a human factors perspective, like we discussed, knowing what the driver is doing is a large part of the battle. So Fred, like you were saying, if there's an app, which there are, cameras are not only capable of looking visually of what you're doing, it can sense temperature changes, it can sense perspiration, it can it can sense even your heart rate variability right now with just a remote camera. And these are all indications of potentially what your level of engagement is. There's a ton of research being done in this field, but Alan, like you said, we should be able to predict if somebody's going to misbehave, right?
Yeah,
I think there
I
is
think,
potential for
yeah,
that,
yeah,
right?
and I think you don't need a long time. You don't need 5 minutes. These things you put processor. The damn things are. I mean, it's amazing how fast the damn things are these days, and they're going to get nothing but faster in the software to do it. You don't need
Hmm.
much of an advance. And
Right.
in some situations, in which everything's sort of okay, you sort of say, yeah, it's okay. But in situation in which, boy, hey, look, you're tailgating the damn person. Damn it, back off. Okay, now, sure, if the driver wants to, yeah, go press on the gas and just jam it up on whatever, and you're probably never going to, I mean, I don't know. Then it's going to take regulations and everything and whatever, beating people over the head and so on. But I guess the other thing that I sort of like, I think, is what the Cadillac system does. That if you don't pay attention, I think the thing just pulls over and turns off, and then
Right.
says,
You cannot.
you need a note from your mother, before we're going to turn it on again. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, I mean, hey, whatever, you should know enough about the person as to what's going to put them in sufficient embarrassing position that they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, didn't mean to do that. I won't do it again. You know, don't hit me with a
Right.
ruler on my wrist or something, or give me a paddle or dunce cap in a
Yeah.
corner or
No,
whatever.
I agree. I mean, so these algorithms that are being used right now, very clever, to look externally, to sort of predict other vehicles' movements and behaviors, and navigation and localization, all of that. Very clever, very, very cutting edge algorithms, machine learning is being used. All of those could now be, and they probably are being pointed inwards as well, so that now what the driver is, who the driver is, what the driver is, not what the driver's thinking, but what the driver's states are, physiological states are. And that can all be used in concert with maybe the age of the vehicle, the time of day, the weather you have right now, the congestion, the location you're at. I mean, like Alan, like you said, if you're in a rural highway, in the late evening on a weekday where there's zero possibility of traffic, then they shouldn't be bugging you about being away a little off centered from your lane. But if you are on a congested highway with high speed, and they know that you're coming back after a long days of work, so you might be fatigued, yes, you might want to
The context is important.
absolutely,
The
context, that's it.
context is important. It's not just the getting of the data, it's establishment of the context of the human machine situation that exists there, characterizing that as best as possible, and then doing the right thing. I mean, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think the context is critical, and in that context, they should roll in the human. Again, that's, I think, we come full circle back to the human. The human is in the loop, will remain in the loop until the system is capable of operating automatically 100% of the time, right? So
Or
until
99,
then,
but nothing's 100% of the
right,
time. Okay,
exactly,
yeah,
right.
99 point, I mean,
So
yes,
I-
if there is even the slightest chance that a human is going to be involved, then the human will need to be sensed and factored in,
yeah,
into whatever the context of that algorithm and all the decision making is going on. That's why I think it's really important to understand humans, because like you said, Alan, you said you termed it misbehaving. I agree. I think it's a general catch-all term. I think misbehaving can be further broken down into intentional versus unintentional, right? I mean, somebody could be intentionally tapping away on their phone or had that extra drink, or unintentional could be because of fatigue, medical issues,
yeah,
emergencies,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
sort of mind wandering. There are also issues about, again, experience and age, which will drive how a human's reactions are, and all of these should actually be taken into consideration when we're talking about misbehaving. So yes, I think misbehaving means veering out of the definitions of an engaged good driver. I think that is what would misbehaving be. But the engaged good driver does not exist. And well, let me rephrase this. A good, constantly engaged driver does not exist 100% of the time, however good you are, right?
Consumers might have a question about this technology, really for both of you, and I guess short answer here if we can. But what happens when there's a conflict? How does it get resolved? I'm the driver. The car says you need to do this, and I say no, I don't want to do that. Who wins? I guess that's the key question for a lot of people.
Well, to me, I think the key wins is you win. I think we have to give it to the person. I think we have to give it to the person. We have to. I think we have to assume that the person, in the they're the ones that have to buy the insurance. They're the ones that are going to be held accountable. They're the ones that are going to go to jail if something bad happens. Okay, and so I think I just don't think I don't think that when push comes to shove on that one, for the technology to accept the liability, which if you're going to be put in control, then you have to have the responsibility. And if you're going to be put in that responsible position, then the entity that does the technology is going to demand something out of that. And probably the thing I think, and what I argue that they're going to demand, is that the human get the hell out of the loop. Okay, if I'm going to be held up responsible, I'm going to make the calls. If you're going to be held up responsible, you can eventually make the calls. I can try to help. I can try to give advice. I can try to do that, and all the other things. I can slap your wrist a little bit, try to correct you, and so on subtly. But in a sense, I think it's all as to who's going to, and to me, that's the fundamental difference between the conventional things that we have now, in which we have the human in the loop, to the other ones driverless. I can't go up to a United aircraft pilot as I'm flying on United to LAX and say, hey, yo, hit it a little bit. Let's get going a little faster, Okay. I mean, they'll arrest me. Okay. They'll say, hey, you crazy. They'll put me in a jacket, whatever. All right. And appropriately so, And sure, I can be, as I say, in the New York City subway system, break the glass and pull the red handle. Okay, but there better be, I better be doing that for darn good reason. Otherwise, take me to jail. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know. Talk to me, from a human factor standpoint. And
Sure. No,
yeah,
I agree with Alan 100%. I'd qualify that a little bit by saying that in terms of responsibility, I think also it has to be demarcated very clearly who is responsible for what in the technology itself, right? So that because the driver, the poor guy behind the wheel, normally is your average Joe who does not want to know anything about your algorithms, about your technology, about your radar range and your LiDAR
I don't
resolution
want
and
to
all of
know about
that,
it.
right? So,
Yeah.
so we have to clarify very, we have to clarify very clearly, I guess. Um, what does the driver, what is the driver responsible for? What is the system responsible for? And that's not easy, right? One example here is uh, one approach that can be taken is something like ABS, where the driver really is not responsible for it anymore. The system can do it better. The anti-skid braking system, the system can pump the brakes rapidly, way better than a human ever could. And that's what is being done now. And that responsibility has been completely taken away from the driver.
Yeah.
And the driver knows it now. Similarly, things like this has to be done in
Electronic
such a way,
stability control is the
like
same thing.
ESC, absolutely.
It's even one that's, I mean, it doesn't say, oh, Alan, you're going around the turn too fast. Why don't you, twiddle the gas and the brake and so on to keep you from you losing your rear end? It doesn't go through that. It says, boom, does it for me. And I realized, man, sweat's coming down. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, and even so, thinking along those lines, with the consumer systems that are in our cars available for us to buy nowadays, it has to be 100% clear what the system can do, but even more important, what the system cannot do, because that is the rub.
Yeah.
If
That gets back to the education point that we were chatting about before, that dealerships aren't taking the time to really educate people who are buying these vehicles. Really, nobody is. So people are, you read the manual and,
you learn on the fly, which gets to be dicey, because you're learning at 60 miles per hour on public roadways what this button does or what this button doesn't, right? So dealerships may or may not be motivated to teach. Manufacturers are motivated, but they may not have the right touch points with the consumer to provide that education. It is a complex system. Let's say the licensing authorities may have the onus of finally deciding whether somebody is ready enough to operate this or not. But, are we going to introduce an endorsement in a license for using advanced technologies? I don't think that's going to fly. So yes, it is a complex issue. People should know about it. The owner's manuals do have information about the systems, but they're written in legal speak. We did a very small study. One of my undergrads actually did an analysis of about 10 user manuals from, I think, late model cars, and found that and this is only for adaptive cruise control, right? Which is a pretty old technology. It's used well. It's trickling down to all vehicles now, but it's an old technology. But adaptive cruise control is not perfect. It works really well in very limited circumstances, and these circumstances have to be known by the driver. And what we found was, from these 10 user manuals, it varied widely across manuals how the limitations of these systems were reported. There was one manual who listed 36 limitations, 36 scenarios or occasions where this adaptive cruise control will not work. And there's another manual that lists only 12. Now, does this mean that manual B has a better adaptive cruise control system? No, the systems are very comparable because the technology is the same. It's just that manufacturer A put in a little bit more effort into laying out all the scenarios where this system will not work, and manufacturer B potentially made a decision that they do not want to overwhelm the consumer with this fire hose of information about what it cannot do, so they're just giving sort of some general limitations.
and they're counting on people to read this too. I mean,
Right.
people essentially want to know, okay, which side is the gas cap on, and how to open the hood, and that's
Well,
about all they need the manual for.
I'll tell you what
Don't get
people
me
need
on
the
that
manual
one, okay?
for. People, our daily drivers for any new vehicle their number one motivation about technology, what they want to learn is how to pair their phone, right? And I can see why. Yes, I can see why, because that is probably the thing that is going to be used more often than not. But the safety features, not so much. And
Does there need to be a standardization of terminology when it comes to all of these
oh
systems?
gosh, yes. Oh gosh, yes. Absolutely,
Oh,
yes. Yes, yes,
that's a
yes,
short answer. Absolutely. I mean,
yes.
it is so damn, and unfortunately, semantics terminology is used for marketing. Okay. And probably somebody also has a trademark patent, whatever on it. And holy hell. So therefore but yes.
No, nobody else can say Super Cruise. They have to call it Tom Cruise or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Who knows? But hey, I have my pet question. And since I have a human factors guy here, I need an answer. Okay. I am so upset, whatever, not really, with my intelligent cruise control as to how it operates. And why am I so screwed up that I'm upset with it? Okay. Because if I use my cruise control, my intelligent cruise control, and I hit the gas, then I speed up because I'm the boss. It will over, yeah, as I should. I can show my whatever hood by hitting the gas, even though I shouldn't. And then if I go off the gas and it says, okay, let's get back to where we should be, and it operates. If I hit the brake, I'd stop braking, even though it didn't necessarily want to or want to that fast. I let off the brake. It doesn't continue to brake if it thinks it needs to brake. It shuts off. What?
I love the question, Alan.
What?
I love the
I
question.
don't get it. I don't get it. Talk to me.
I don't have an answer for that. I think that's obviously a design decision
Yeah, of
made
course it is. I know it
at
is.
a systems level high up. But this speaks to the complexity of using the system. The system is
Yeah,
complicated. Of course, it is complex. It's
of
sophisticated
course.
now. But the complexity of using the system, it is not intuitive. So I couldn't have said it in a nicer, better way, Alan. Yes, you're hitting the gas temporarily disengages your ACC. You're hitting the brake, your brake disengages the ACC. The driver has to know that. The driver will not know that until they have tried it out a couple of times and figured it out. Even if you read the manual, this is not very clearly stated, right? What we've tried to do in our research is we take these ACC systems and we completely deconstruct it so that we break it down into just a number of
But
states.
why would you design it that way? Why did the Society of Automotive Engineers ever think that this was a good idea? Except for, the stupid cruise control systems that just, did the throttle and didn't do the brake. Okay. Then if you hit the brake, that was it. Turn the damn thing off. Why? Because you were turning off the throttle. Of course, I want to turn off the throttle if I hit the brake. I don't want to turn off the brake. Now I have two things that operate, not just one.
Yeah.
Is it really that the stupidity these are intelligent people? What in the human factors, human machine interaction piece, or am I just a goofy person? Okay. I think it is enormously dangerous. Okay. Why? Because when do I do this? I happen to use my intelligent cruise control on Route 1. Route 1 has 1 billion traffic lights. Okay. And if I'm like, behind somebody that's moving, it's like really great. If, way out in the head, there's a bunch of stop traffic at a traffic light. I'd like to approach it a little bit slower than my intelligent cruise control likes to do it. So I tap the brake and I cool it a little bit. Okay. I'm actually trying to save gas because I'm so damn cheap and I have some sort of thing and save the environment and hug a tree or something, whatever. And then all of a sudden I take my foot off the brake. The car just keeps going. And all of a sudden that traffic hasn't moved. The brakes have to be applied again. And the cruise control system would want to apply it if it was still on. But because I tapped the brake, it's not on anymore. And now it's all up to me.
Yeah, no, it's
I mean, and I have to wait for the automated emergency braking system that does what? I mean, holy hell, that thing tightens this, it moves
yeah,
something
you
in
never
front
want
of
to
my
wait
legs
for
so
the
I don't lose
automatic
my
emergency
legs. And
braking.
it's 1.6 seconds before and all hell breaks loose. Why doesn't the intelligent cruise control go all the way continuously through the automated emergency braking system and in fact not wait for the automated emergency braking system so that it brings you to talk to me here? Damn it.
Yeah. I would. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm second
Yeah,
guessing the automotive engineers when they do the system design.
yeah,
But
no, you have to be friends with them. I don't. So go ahead.
but at the same time, I do agree. I think they really have to take into consideration what human behaviors are, what human expectations are, right? So what we've learned, what we've been molded to do, just in terms of hitting the brake does this and hitting the gas does this, and what the consequent expectations of those actions are. And I agree. I mean, I have the exact same confusion, even when I look at it from an academic standpoint. By deconstructing an ACC system, I see the various controls that are there, and then the brake disengages, sort of makes sense. The gas temporarily disengages, but you release the gas and it re-engages. Yes, that is surprising to me. The problem from a human factors perspective is now we've got to put a band-aid on it. We've got to put a band-aid on it so that now our drivers know that these two behaviors are different. And how do we prepare our drivers to know it and mold the driver so that they can play well with the system?
As I said before, the computers should be working for me. I shouldn't be working for the computers. The computers shouldn't be asking me to change the way I think and so on. It should be taking into account the way I think, what I think, with the signals that I'm giving, and not doing the wrong thing. Damn it. Sorry, whatever. Fred.
We'll be back with more, but and a lot more. But first, this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETF, Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. To get more info, head to motoetf.com. On the website, read the white paper titled The Smart Transportation Revolution. It's under the Insights and News tab. Some great information there to help you make informed decisions about investing. ETFs, you probably know, are a good way to spread risk with investments, maybe focus on a particular category of stocks. The site, once again, is motoetf.com. Some headlines to touch on this week, Alan. In the newsletter, you highlight that Australia now has new guidelines for trials of automated vehicles. And this is while the outgoing administration here has proposed a rule change that would exempt self-driving cars from crash standards. Steps forward?
Yeah, I think they're all steps forwards. I think they're moving forward. And also what Elaine Chao released, their sort of
I don't know if she's still there, but
no, she's not still there, right? She
right.
Of course, I mean, of course she stepped down last I mean, her husband is Mr. McDonald. I mean, she can't stay in that administration after what happened. I mean, thank goodness. And I do want to say that it has been a good 4 years for the federal DOT. She did a great job in the leadership. I think some progress was made, and in fact, we could have, I think that the focus being on automation rather than connectivity is the right focus. It's how we can get benefits in the short term. Eventually, we can do connectivity, but again, the problem with connectivity is if I want to communicate with you, I have to have it, and you have to have it. And so therefore, it's the probability that I have it times the probability that you have it. and probabilities squared are small numbers unless the probabilities are very high. And so that means that you get nothing out of this. You get very little out of this until the penetrations are very large. And so how in the hell do you get started? I mean, the challenge with any technology is getting it started so that it can begin to scale, so it can take advantage of size and so on, to become better, to become cheaper, to become all that. And man, if you can't get benefits at the very beginning, you need a sugar daddy for a long time, and boom, it is tough. So anyway, kudos to her. Kudos to Diana in the Office of Research and Development and so on. I mean, I think that they're very good people there, and we did very well. We did not overregulate, or we've allowed this technology to move. People say it's a little bit stagnated. I don't think it's stagnated. I think that, a lot of hype was out there and we didn't have enough I's dotted and T's crossed, and we've had an opportunity. I think the silver lining in the pandemic is that in fact it's given us an opportunity to do the things that we were trying to do a little bit better without having to really get out there in the marketplace too early, and doing it. It's really good that we're not hearing any news out of Chandler and Phoenix from Waymo. That no news is good news, because the only news that's going to be news is bad news. Okay,
right. Means it's working.
Yeah, it means it's working. It means if you look at the benefits one's trying to do benefits and safety. The deaths per how many million miles or so on, you're trying to reduce. And so, these are very safe systems in the beginning. People do tend to behave very well. They do work very well. And we're trying to make improvements on a system that already works darn well. So we're not going to see a lot, in the beginning. And then if you look at the mobility piece, just providing the mobility and getting that darn thing started, I always relate to the Morgantown Personal Rapid Transit System. My goodness, they opened that sucker in 1975, 46 years ago. It's been, there's been a couple broken ankles or something like that, because too many kids tried to stuff it like they stuff Volkswagens, there at the University of West Virginia. But most unfortunately, it barely got started, but it never scaled. It never expanded. It never went anywhere. It never, whatever the technology and developments that were put into doing that, boom, one system, 6 stations, whatever. And this thing, we're trying to, all the billions that have been invested in, we've got to get the thing started and begin to scale to be able to get the quality of life benefits, one person at a time, and accumulate that. That is a long, slow process that we have to go through. And so anyway, long story, but anyway, I think it's been a great 4 years in transportation through this administration. Probably, I don't know, one view of the whole darn thing, one might see that in fact we've gotten the transportation was maybe the best, executive department in the whole ball of wax. I don't think we can look at education as having made important strides, or even, maybe energy independence a little bit, environment certainly not. Whatever, pick the other ones. I don't know.
You could go on for a long time, I think, on that.
I don't know. So I think, and I think that's a credit to Elaine Chao, and I think, and of course I'm not a Republican, so whatever, as in case anybody didn't quite know. But
well, another item, and this ties in with what we've been talking about, I think, to some extent. Tesla is saying you're 7 times less likely to be in a crash with autopilot. But electric, they're saying the data is not that clear.
Yeah, no, they say that every time they put out whatever their quarterly report or whatever, and it's so on and so forth. And part of the problem is, and all these, whenever somebody puts some of these things out there, everybody wants to do it. There should be a fact check. there really should be a fact check. I've offered to do the fact check on these things independently and whatever, and don't want to be paid for it. Unfortunately, Elon has not yet taken me up on it. Don't take me up on it. Just have somebody else do it. That's not in Tesla. That's not being paid by Tesla. I, you know, Tesla's system is really, a lot of parts of that is really good. As we discussed, it's, with respect to monitoring the driver, absolutely. Darn it. Why don't you just, nuzzle up to GM and say, hey, help us out here. Okay. Why don't we work? Why don't we work together on making everybody safer on the road, as opposed to competing on it? And we've made this argument in this podcast before. These companies should be cooperating on safety, and certainly in the driverless business, and certainly in the vehicle automation business and crash avoidance business, they should be cooperating instead of competing. We can't compete on safety. We should be cooperating on safety. Everybody's improves by improved safety.
You have thoughts on that, Anuj?
I agree about, I agree with Alan about the companies cooperating on safety and not competing. I think that is absolutely critical. There's a lot of innovation going on. There's a lot of innovation going on in Detroit, and there's a lot of innovation going on in Silicon Valley. So, the new innovation, you can call it that. And, it doesn't necessarily need to be at odds, or, I can understand competition from a manufacturer for dollars, or for consumers, or for drivers, but really everybody benefits. The societal benefit of cooperating for safety is massive. I think everybody does see the writing on the wall regarding driver state monitoring. Knowing the state of the driver, having a camera inside the car. Maybe everybody is not as motivated to do it because their focus is on, improving their LiDAR, or, bringing down the cost of the external sensors, and so on. But yes, it would be great if Tesla took a page out of GM's book and brought in driver state monitoring into their mix. The Tesla systems are very impressive, but they are flawed where the interface with the human happens. So therefore, the driver's expectations are completely inflated. And we need to be able to figure that out. We need to be able to figure some way to take care of that.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that in Tesla, in the auto steer, if you put your hands on the steering wheel, it turns it off or something. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's the situation. To me, designing it that way, so we're going down and afraid to touch. If the human's going to be in the loop in any sense, these things need to be more cooperative, and so on. And basically, either give the human, because they're the ones that responsibility, the ability to override. But if the system but to override, you have to make a concerted effort. The system has to realize that for whatever reason you think you should be in control. However, the human machine interface does that to get that sense. Then yeah, you bought it. It's yours. You'll go to jail if you kill people and all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, but it should be doing things even if you kind of want to just go along with it. Okay, it shouldn't all of a sudden stop and say, "Hey, it's yours. I'm out of here." Forget you. These are supposed to be helping us. Okay. Anyway.
So you also point out in the newsletter, before we move on, that Daniel Ives, an analyst with Wedbush, is saying Tesla could be a $2 trillion company in just a year or two. So they've been moving along with their.
I'm just happy I didn't short them at 286. Okay, I mean,
right.
Any smart investor does the inverse Kornhauser investing theory. They wait to see what the hell I do and do the exact opposite. They become rich.
Intel's Mobileye, in the meantime, is bringing autonomous vehicle test fleets to 4 more cities this year. And you have something to say about that. They're looking at Detroit, Paris, Shanghai, and Tokyo.
I mean, all the places where if you really want to do driverless, that's not where you should be starting. Maybe after you've gotten the darn thing to work and, in 20 years, you go to, in doing anything, you could either start easy where you can do it and then learn and grow it, or you could go after, hey, the big enchilada, do that, do a Frank Sinatra, and say, hey, I did New York, I can do it anywhere. Okay. I don't know. I guess I'm one of these, lame brains that would prefer to start easy and evolve it than a Frank Sinatra. They're doing a Frank Sinatra. Great. Whatever. And in New York, why? New York doesn't even want this. They have a subway.
Well, we're going to stay in New York for this next item,
system.
Alan.
Huh?
We're going to stay in New York for this next item, really, to kind of wrap things up. And if you look on the mantle behind Alan for our viewers, you'll know why he included this in the newsletter. A piece on the new Moynihan train station in New York.
Yeah, it is amazing that Patrick Moynihan was able to start the federal funding. Well, of course, he was chair of the committee and so on, and put up the money to convert the post office to something like what the grandeur of the Pennsylvania station was before. People thought, hey, let's tear this down and put a basketball arena on top of it, whatever, in place of it, and put the station underground into whatever. And it is nice, and apparently it's coming in, even though it took 10 years, and in budget, I think 1.9 billion or something, or maybe 1.4, whatever the number is. And I especially like the comment in comparison with the station that was built, the PATH station was rebuilt at the World Trade Center, and what a waste of public money that was at $4 billion to create a shopping mall. I mean, and hopefully that's not what's going to happen to this station. And in fact, it is going to be a grand transportation hub. And I guess we should build the new tunnels and so on and feed it and get service between that and allow the New York, New Haven and so on to come from Grand Central to Pennsylvania Station. I mean, there's a reason why those stations are separated and not connected. They competed. They were independent private companies that competed. And if you're going to compete, you're of course not going to cooperate, I guess, which is not what we should be doing in safety.
Getting back to that.
Seriously, I mean,
right.
absolutely seriously. We should find other ways. Yeah, capitalism's great and competition's great and all the other things, intellectual property's great and all that stuff. But the safety piece, if this isn't safe, it's not going to happen. The public sector is going to shut it off. It's not going to let it. I'm not going to let it go down my street here. Okay, the people aren't going to let it. It's got to be safe. It's got to be safe, and safe is tough.
Alan, you had one more item in the newsletter. I just want to touch on real quick, a report from the LA Times that was headlined, "Many couldn't afford a car in 2020. The rich went on a buying spree." And that certainly drew your attention.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I apologize for how well I did last year. I shouldn't have done that well. I mean, a number of people, many people didn't do very well last year, and it's we got to get back. We got to get back. We got to get vaccinated. When the hell am I going to get vaccinated? I mean, come on.
It's coming. That's
I guess, and that.
But I mean, that's certainly taken a lot longer than a lot of people thought it would.
What are we doing for 9 months? Why do we have to do things in series? that are parallelizable. The great thing about computers and software today, why is it so darn good, is because of the realization that a lot of things can be done in parallel. They don't have to happen sequentially. And if you can do them in parallel, then there are those little things that go zzz, there are a bunch of those guys available to go in parallel and make the stuff happen. That anyway.
Well, the 4th annual Princeton Smart Driving Cars Summit is underway. In fact, this week, we had Anuj as a
very nice
panelist.
To have you then. Yesterday, yes.
And the summit continues each Thursday at noon Eastern through mid-April. You can find more information to register at smartdrivingcar.com, and there you can also get information about becoming a sponsor. We want to thank Anuj for joining us today. Really great to have you with us. So much terrific information and insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alain. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Fred.
thank you. It was
a great conversation.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, and a lot of good content. And a lot of good work is being done. And I'm not. I think we just have to do a little bit of thinking, and every once in a while sort of go back to kind of the beginning and say, let's make sure that that we can do just a little bit differently here and really make some more big improvements. So great having you. Enjoyed it. Have a great semester.
Thank you very much.
We look to the future.
We look to the future. You have a great semester too, come February 1st. Alain, thank you so much, Fred, for organizing. And I really enjoyed the conversation. I look forward to the rest of the summit. And as always, I look forward to reading your newsletters.
Thank you.
Always great.
Well, thank you to our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO. More information is available at motoetf.com. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com, also on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker. Amazon Music has us now too, as does Audible, SoundCloud, and more. You can ask your smart speaker to play us. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhauser. Thanks for listening or watching, and please stay safe.
And have a great weekend, and see you next Thursday at the next summit session.